And welcome into the MLB Hot Stove Daily here at the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys taking the time and joining us this evening. Lots to get into. A whole bunch of rumors are starting to begin as the New York Yankees have officially opened their search for a third baseman. Sounds like they're starting their search with one of 8 different options that they're currently contemplating. Jon Heyman mentioning that earlier today through Bleacher Report. That's not the only team that's looking to do some buying here at the deadline. The Texas Rangers, we've covered them ad nauseum the last couple of weeks, and their dogged pursuit of contention this year. They certainly have a great pitching staff. They performed very well this year, but the hitting has really let them down so far. They are expected to get some reinforcements in that regard, but they're certainly playing a lot better than they were at the beginning of the year. If they can continue to improve as they have been over the last 15, 20 days or so, and they add something at the deadline, they could really be a team that's a force on the American League side. Let's not forget about a very competitive American League East, however. The New York Yankees have just been unseated as the division leader by the scorching hot Toronto Blue Jays. Yes, Theo, those Toronto Blue Jays just swept the New York Yankees. That team looks very good right now. The pitching is starting to come together for Toronto. I still think they're probably one elite arm away from really being a serious contender on the American League side. But hats off to them for where they started the season to where they are now is just a tale of 2 seasons as far as I'm concerned. You start the year with the uncertainty around Vladimir Guerrero Jr., what your team is going to look like, not just at the end of the season, let alone at the trade deadline, what your team is going to look like in, say, 2, 3, 4 years from now. They answer those questions and certainly seems to have brought a lot more harmony to that clubhouse there in Toronto. Be sure to hit that thumbs up on the video. Got about 12 of you guys with us right now. If you guys wouldn't mind smashing that like button, goes a long way to helping us out. And participate in the chat. Let us know where you're watching from, who your favorite team is, the trade target you're watching, where you think they'll end up going, what the package could look like. We always like to look ahead here at the Upside, so please feel free to reach out and say hello. Follow us on X at Upside Ascend and on Facebook, Upside Sports Network as well. Everyday Mets, welcome in. Welcome in. Subway Series is here. It's going to be pretty good, I will say that. Rangers should trade for Luis Robert? No, I think that's the one player I don't think any team should trade for. For 3 different reasons. One, performance. When he's been healthy this year, he hadn't been very good. When he's not healthy, the availability issue comes up. Then you have to worry about the finances. For me, it's stay away, stay away, stay away. 3 strikes, you're out. I want no part of Luis Robert at this trade deadline this year. If you're that desperate for offense, there's a number of different players I'd invite you to look at, but I don't think Luis Robert should be one of those options. Sean, welcome in. Guardians just got swept 2 series in a row. That's why I think they will be a seller at this year's deadline. I don't think they see themselves as a true contender this year. They were said to be looking to consolidate some pieces this offseason. They ultimately chose not to do that. They diversified their assets. That's what they did by trading away Josh Naylor, bringing in Carlos Santana, taking the assets they got from Naylor, putting them in the minor leagues, something they've done over and over and over and over again in their history. This offseason, they were said to be looking to consolidate assets, not trade away Josh Naylor, but maybe go after a Kyle Tucker. Obviously, that didn't happen, and I think they changed course rather quickly this offseason to one of what they've always done, a little bit of buying and selling. This year's deadline, I think, will be no different. They'll try to capitalize on the availability of high-end closers, players like Emmanuel Clase, guys like that. I think they have a plethora of guys who can fill that role, and so they're going to have the upper hand in some of those negotiations for some elite relief help. Pirates 6-game winning streak, crazy world. Yeah, I mean, we saw crazy things from the Marlins, the Pirates, the White Sox even to begin the year. Rockies even had a nice stretch of about 15 games there earlier this year. But ultimately, they're not a contender. And I think they see the writing on the wall that this offseason they're going to have to get serious about what the long-term plan is going to be around Paul Skeens and others. Sean, when do the trades start happening? I would expect sometime after this weekend. I think everybody's going to kind of go home, have fun with their families, Independence Day, and then really buckle down. 1, on the scouting, 2, seeing who's available, and start building packages for other teams. After we get through the All-Star break, I think is when we're going to see some serious activity. I think we'll get that first initial rush of teams trying to make the moves before the rest of the market really pounces on a couple of moves there. And then I think we'll get a nice lull when we see prices kind of settle in. And then we get closer to the final week and a half before the trade deadline, we'll see another flurry of activity. So that's kind of your calendar for what to expect at this trade deadline. Appreciate you guys joining us. Again, hit that thumbs up on the bottom of the video. Really goes a long way to helping us out. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, hit that subscribe button if you are new here. And let's get into some trade talk. I want to start tonight with the Boston Red Sox. Let me go ahead and pull up my screen here for you guys. Now, Boston currently sits, 3 games out of the last wild card spot? They're right there as far as a team that should be in contention this year. However, their struggles with, being able to get outs in certain situations really have struggled. And I'm curious to see what their decision is around Alex Bregman. Scott Boras and company say they're open to an extension there. I think after the trade for Rafi Devers, they were hoping to get a deal done before the All-Star break. There is still time to get that done. I'm sure they're still discussing those things, especially with this injury that he had this year. But as far as how impactful he's been to that team, much better defense over there at third base, lengthening out that lineup, really giving this team some real helium to kind of make them a real contender on the American League side. He's a linchpin for that team. However, because they're 2 games under 500, they're 3-7 in their last 10, kind of having a couple of great weeks where they go 2-1 against the Yankees, 2-1 against the Mariners, and then they go and kind of drop a few games against teams they should be beating over the last couple of weeks. Kind of the ups and downs of the season. That's what you usually see from an inexperienced team. And I think the return of Bregman could solve those issues. Even if they don't sell at the deadline, they could very well make a push here for the wild card if they don't get the extension done with Bregman. If they don't get the extension done, though, I think this front office has shown a willingness to move on and recoup some value for what they or whatever they can get. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they won't still try to compete for the wild card if they try to move on from Alex Bregman. It just means that their chances are certainly a lot less likely. If they did trade him, I think they would try to trade anything that's not nailed down in a free agent year. We're talking about Aroldis Chapman, players like that. I think Aroldis Chapman and Alex Bregman stack for the Texas Rangers would solve both of their issues. An elite closer and give them a third baseman, another bat in that lineup that they really need. It would cost a pretty penny, but they don't have the money to really, to put towards those types of players right now. They'd have to get Boston to pick up the majority of those salaries, otherwise send out salary back to Boston. They don't want to do that. So the only way I think a trade like that happens is, one, if Bregman says, no, I'm not signing an extension, I'm testing free agency. Two, they're kind of out of the wild card picture where they are right now, kind of hovering around that 3 to 4 games out. Three, that they get to the trade deadline and they say, hey, look, are you serious about signing with us in the offseason, even though you're willing to test free agency? If his answer doesn't come back as, hey, I'll give you guys last chance to sign me, then I think they're going to have a real discussion about trading him away. And whatever the package that they could get, I think would be massive. We're talking about Rafi Devers, giving them a nice package back, especially considering his struggles earlier in the year, the big money that was already attached to him. Obviously, they got a decent package, a nice package back, but it wasn't necessarily overwhelming. A Bregman, even though he's in an expiring contract, with options of course, he could certainly command a huge haul from an offensive perspective. He would be the next big difference maker on the market. Without Bregman moving, I think Devers is probably the biggest bat to move. So I think Bregman moving would certainly give them a nice haul back in return. Remember, they kind of gutted their farm system to a certain extent with the trades that they made this offseason for Garrett Crochet, and bringing in some other pieces might be another way to kind of keep this farm system going. Of course, they have some good pieces already there. You have Mayer, you have Roman Anthony as well, and others that certainly have some great futures ahead of them there in Boston. But if they can't get that extension done, this Red Sox front office and Red Sox ownership group hasn't really been willing to break the bank for anybody. Are they really willing to pay top dollar for Alex Bregman when they're haggling over pennies this offseason just to get him on the 3-year deal? With as good as a season as Bregman has had so far, if he finishes the season healthy, you can bet your bottom dollar he's going to get a much bigger payday this year, and he's going to be looking for that long-term dollar as well. All right, try to catch up on a few of these comments here. Theo, after watching the Yankees closely this weekend, I don't know how they keep going with Jazz at third. Do you think they make a move there? I do. They have been connected with Ryan McMahon once again. I'm sure they'll kick the tires on Arenado. If Bregman is available, even though it is in the division, I think they'll try to kick the tires there. I think the most likely difference maker for them, though, probably comes in the form of Eugenio Suarez from the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now, the Diamondbacks are not necessarily looking to sell at this deadline. However, if they get a price that meets their asking here, I think they could make a decision there and try to retool around the deadline. Doesn't necessarily mean they're looking to drop out of contention for a wild card. They're going to try to capitalize on the pieces that they do have and kind of retool going forward. They're going to look for more controllable contracts, those kinds of things. They have a couple of guys that are headed towards free agency. If they can get something of value for a long-term deal, or at least longer than the next year or two, I think they'd probably take them up on that offer. But Suarez, I think, is probably the most likely out of all the options for the Yankees. John, are there any chances the Rangers look at Alex Bregman? I think they already are looking at Alex Bregman, along with a couple of other teams. There was a report about a week ago that kind of started all this Alex Bregman talk about his availability here at the deadline. I still don't think he's necessarily being talked about at all between teams. For instance, I don't think the Red Sox are necessarily answering Chris Young from the Texas Rangers saying, hey, I'll offer you X, Y, and Z for Alex Bregman. I don't think we're anywhere close to that type of a stage here. I think we're getting to the kicking the tires. How healthy is Bregman? What is he looking for in free agency? You talk to kind of the people around the Red Sox organization that are at least in that orbit and get a sense for where that front office is leaning. Are they willing to extend him? Are they not? Are they willing to pay the piper? Are they not? What type of return would they want to ask for if they did move on from an Alex Bregman? We're in kind of the exploratory phase of that discussion. If the Rangers wanted to add a bat at the deadline, I think the more likely option is guys like Ryan O'Hearn, Marcell Ozuna, Josh Naylor, players that kind of fit that first base DH type archetype there. Do we have the pieces to make it happen? Absolutely. In fact, if you kind of head over to Baseball Trade Values, I already had his value pulled up 2.4 for the rest of the year. However, remember he's got about $12 million left on his deal if you trade him at the deadline. Rangers don't have the financial flexibility to do that, at least to avoid the tax. So they'd have to get the Red Sox to pony up the rest of that. So say you get them to pony up, say, $9 million of that. That balloons his value up to about 13 million as far as value. You're going to have to overpay to be able to bring him in. And remember, you're only getting him for a couple of years. Well, or a couple of months anyway, excuse me. So if you're looking for, say, a 15, 16, 17 valuation, you're probably looking Rosario as kind of a headliner piece. If they want offense back, you're probably looking Dreiling. Maybe you give up Osuna since he's already major league ready. But they already have outfielders out the wazoo. Maybe they'd want a guy like Josh Young to take over there at third base. I think the Rangers would be loath to move on from Josh Young, even if they brought in an Alex Bregman type. Primarily because he's such a big influence in that clubhouse. We just saw him be sent down the other day by the Rangers, and that really kind of sent ripple effects through the clubhouse. I think they were fine. They just had to take time and adjust. But he is a quote-unquote locker room leader, even as a young guy there. And I'm curious to see if the Rangers would really move on from a Josh Young, even in a trade for Alex Bregman, because there are other players of similar value to where they wouldn't have to necessarily trade a guy like Josh Young. And if Young does figure it out, then you have another great piece in your lineup moving forward. All right. What is the likelihood Adolis Garcia is traded? I'd probably say 40-60 right now. 40 likely, 60 unlikely. Primarily because I think Adolis Garcia has really kind of figured things out, to a certain extent this year, about as good as you can expect for him. That mental break that he took kind of solved his issues. Strikeout numbers are down, power numbers are up, situational hitting is come and go, but that's far better than where he was at the beginning of the year. Far better than where he was last year. And I think he's back to being that big moment, here's the spotlight type of guy, and he's ready to take over in those situations. If he does get traded, I think you could get a nice haul for him. Maybe a decent level closer. We're not talking elite level, but we're talking a guy who might make a difference for you in a pennant race. Now, the reason why the Rangers would do that when they're trying to buy here at the deadline is to offload his salary. The salary there is the biggest reason why. Otherwise, I don't think the Rangers would move on from Adolis Garcia at all. Sean, Cubs want another third baseman. I think they're looking for another bat, somebody who has some versatility. Third base, somebody who can play all over the diamond, really. That way, if they do have some guys falter in the second half of the year, young guys that falter in the second half, they have a veteran to kind of take that spot and show them how it's done as you go through August and September. And I don't think that price is going to be very high. They were one of the teams that was rumored to be in the last-minute teams that had tried to bring in an Alex Bregman. If he becomes available, they are said to be all in this year. Maybe they go out there and do something like that if they can't get the true ace that they absolutely need to get. But until they get a true ace, I think the Cubs are very limited with their playoff success and what their chances are to win the World Series. Brady, LeBron James was just traded to the Knicks. That was the most surprising. Surprised I've been since the Luka trade. I don't think so. I haven't seen anything like that. Let me see. If that happened, that's insane. Let's just see. I don't think so. I think my phone would have broke if that happened. That would be a big negative. All right. Beautiful. Out there at Wrigley Field. Now that's baseball as I remember it. All right. Let's try to get through a couple more of these comments and then we'll get into some trade talk here and build some packages. Yankees get embarrassed north of the border. Springer, 6 for 12, 4 home runs, 12 RBIs in a 4-game series. I thought he did better than that. I thought he was 8 for 14, something like that. But either way, Springer was very good as well. Brendan, what would a Gino Suarez to the Jays trade look like? We can do that one for you guys. Puck drops here. Welcome in. Welcome in. Let's see here. Did not get traded. Yes. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and do that Eugenio Suarez to the Blue Jays. We'll come back to this one that I was formulating before we got on the air. But Blue Jays and Diamondbacks. First, what is Suarez's value? We're looking majors. We're looking guys that are almost out of contract here. Suarez only has a couple months left on his deal. You trade him to the Blue Jays, value around 5.4. Remember, you're going to have to overpay because the Diamondbacks are looking to still be competitive this year. So, what do you give up? I don't think Martinez would get it done. They're wanting somebody of some value back. Bo Bichette, I don't think you're looking to offload his contract anyway. If you're trying to bring in Suarez, you're not looking to sell here on Bo Bichette either. Joey Luperfido, that could be an interesting one. Clement, obviously you're not going that high. Let's go to our second page and just see if there's anything that makes sense. Dalton Varsho, trade him back to Arizona. I don't think that really fits with the pieces that they currently have. Let's go back over to page 1. Let's say you get Luperfido as kind of the major league guy that stays or that goes back on the Diamondbacks roster, and then you give him a Bonilla type of a piece back. You're overpaying by a little. Do I think that's enough to get the deal done? In theory, but I think there's probably a better trade out there for Suarez. But just to validate it and post it, we can go ahead and do that one. Another team that's going to be in there for his services. Welcome in, Johnny. Appreciate you joining us. Chris Flexen is really good now. I mean, it is Chris Flexen, so, you know, ebbs and flows, my friend. All right, Diamondbacks. The Yankees, like I mentioned, are probably the most likely fit at this point for him. So what would it take to bring in Eugenio Suarez? Majors. Years left. Suarez. I wonder, how does this tool work? Interesting. Okay. So basically, it just takes you to the page already where you are or where you're at. Okay. All right. So we're looking for around 5.4. We're trying to beat the offers of the other clubs. You're looking for somebody to go back on the major league roster, most likely. Arias could be a straight-up deal. Suarez for Arias. That could be interesting, but I don't think it does anything for the Diamondbacks trying to stay competitive this year. Welcome in, Hank. No matter what, there's always an upside, Sports Network. Appreciate you joining us once again. Weaver. You're not moving on from him. Let me do the majors side of this for the Yankees, just see what pieces would even fit that description. Even if it is a negative asset with, you know, very little to offer. DJ LeMahieu doesn't do anything. You could offload the salary, of course. That would be helpful, I suppose. You're not giving up Goldschmidt, Bellinger, nobody like that. Carrasco to give up innings. I don't even know if he's even worth the effort. Braden Shoemaker's on this roster. That's interesting. Let's say you send back Peraza just to take back a roster spot. Something like that. And then you go to the minors. You're looking for something in that 5 value range. 5 to 7. So you could do Hampton. If they want to go a little younger, you could go Hurd. Let's say they go Lalane. Welcome in, Willard. Been a minute. Appreciate you joining us. As a Rays fan, do you think we move Brendan Lau, club option next year, leads all second basemen with 19 home runs and batting .274? I think this is the year for that. I would agree there, but I said that the last time when we got to the deadline and they were dangling Yandy Diaz out there and ultimately chose to hold on to him. Trust me, Astros needs an outfield who can hit and another ace pitcher and some more bullpen. First, you're not getting all of that, that's for sure. If you're the Astros, you might be able to get a nice outfielder, say like a Verdugo who is just designated for assignment. I think that's something we talked about this offseason that could have been a fit for them. Bullpen, I think that's a legitimate option for them to try to get a middle relief guy. They already have Hader in the back. And then as far as a starting pitcher, I don't think you have the wherewithal to go out there and get an ace. I don't think you have the prospect capital to do it either. But we've seen stranger things happen. I mean, we saw Luka get traded to the Lakers for basically a bag of potato chips. Sorry, Anthony Davis, but Luka had so much more value. I do think Anthony Davis is still a top 20 player in the NBA when healthy. But again, how often is that nowadays? And you're giving up on all the 7 more years before you even get to the point of an Anthony Davis. My point is, we've seen weirder things happen, but I really doubt we'll see the Astros have the pieces necessary to even get an ace that you're referring to there, Willard. What kind of return do you think we get for Diaz, Lau, or Littell? We can do those here in just a little bit as well. Got a few requests as far as the trades that we can work out. But let's say we do Lalane in this deal, and I want to do one more piece just to kind of round it out. Say you give up the 16-year-old shortstop, Manny Cedeno. I think that could get a deal done. You get a nice pitching prospect, Peraza to take the roster spot, and Cedeno to kind of give you a future. That, I think, probably gets the deal done at the deadline if you're the Yankees. I like that deal more than I do the one we just did for the Blue Jays. Let's go ahead and do the Alex Bregman one we had up earlier. I think the Rangers are probably the most likely team if Bregman does get moved because of the natural fit between the two teams. I think the Rangers are just perfectly poised to kind of strike on this type of a player. I think they will go all in here at the deadline if they get the right deal. And with the Red Sox, I really like the way that they've their roster is set up currently. But if they can't get that extension done, again, that's the biggest, asterisk, caveat, whatever you want to say, to this deal. I think that's the biggest impediment to this deal happening. Because if they get that extension done, or at least looks like they could in the offseason, I don't think this move happens. But if they're currently, say they get, they slip a couple more games before the All-Star break. Say they drop an extra game or two to a team like the Rockies that they're going to be playing here over the next week and a half. Say they go into the All-Star break. Let me show you where their standings are right now. Right now they sit 3 games out of the last wild card spot. Say the Rangers continue to play, better baseball. Say the Guardians continue to struggle, the Twins continue to struggle. The Red Sox are really the last team that has a chance to get into the postseason out of those 3 teams: the Angels, Rangers, and Red Sox. Are any of those teams necessarily locks to get in? No. I think that the Red Sox could very easily convince themselves that they have a chance to win this year. And I think they do as currently constructed. They need better pitching. They need to perform better. They certainly spent a lot of money to address that pitching staff, and that's really been the issue for them so far. But you look at the Rangers, 304 runs allowed. You look at the Red Sox, 406 allowed. You look at the runs scoring. Boston's certainly done more than enough offense, 421 runs. You notice that's more than anybody that's out of the or that's not in the postseason. You look at the Rangers, 330 runs scored. Now, the good thing I will say is Texas offense is looking better. Boston still looks just as good as they had all year. Of course, Devers is no longer there. Bregman will be coming back. But again, all of this is with the caveat that they don't get the extension done for Alex Bregman. Now, Aroldis Chapman, I think, would be the other perfect piece in this deal to really bump up the value in this trade, because I think those are the 2 biggest needs for Texas: a productive bat and a high-end closer. And it doesn't cost you anything in future years for Aroldis Chapman either. They have some good young options coming as well that they could go after. But let's say those are the 2 names. One other thing I want to mention is that for the Rangers to do this, you're going to have to eat roughly about $13-14 million if you're the, we'll go ahead and say 16 just to make it nice round, a little bit bigger numbers just for the return going to the Rangers, because again, they don't have the financial resources to allow them, or to keep them underneath the tax if they made this move without the Red Sox eating some salary. The good part about this is that normally Bregman and Aroldis Chapman wouldn't give you much of a return. But by adding that much cash in there to a team that does not like taking on cash, that's going to get you a really nice return. So you're going to have to overpay to the nth degree. You got 20 value here. You're probably going to have to not overpay by, say, 22, 23. You're probably going to have to overpay by, say, 27, 28 as far as the value here. So kind of keep that in mind. So again, as I mentioned, they want to hold on to Josh Young, I think, more than anything out of all their position players on the active roster that are available to be traded. So that leaves you with, say, like a Rosario to be the headliner of this deal. I don't think it changes the timeline at all for the Rangers. I think it does give them another arm, another young arm for the Red Sox to work with in their future. You're going to need some pieces going back, though. Yolfran Castillo could be the piece that finishes it off. I think he's too valuable, though, for the Rangers for where they currently see this roster. I don't think they're going to give a major league ready piece like Ozuna. They already have too many outfielders to deal with on their current roster. I think you could get one piece off of this roster if you're the Red Sox, and that would be a guy like Jake Burger. Play a little bit of third base, a little bit of first base, a little bit of DH, making next to nothing this year, and obviously having a down year offensively, but he should be coming around. He won't command a lot of money when he goes through his arbitration years either. So looking at just those two pieces gets you to around 19.6. You're getting a really nice top 100 pitching prospect in Rosario. So you're at least getting one top 100 guy back in exchange for Bregman and Chapman. Now you're going to want a little bit of volume and lottery tickets here at the back end of this offer. So I would say at least two more smaller level prospects would probably go in this deal. Talking about maybe a Winston Santos on the position side, Devin Fitzgerald on the pitching side, Santos on the position player side, Devin Fitzgerald could be a nice fit there. But I'm going to go with, if you're getting Rosario, I think they're going to want to go a little bit younger. So let's say they go after a Mitch Bratt, who's been mentioned more than a few times as far as a trade candidate for the Rangers, as far as a guy that's drawing interest. And then we'll go to Cameron Cawley, I think. No. Let's go back to that first page. I don't think the value's quite there for it. Let's say you do Fitzgerald. I don't know. Would that do it for you? If you're a Red Sox fan? As a Rangers fan, I'm sitting here going, okay, Rosario, we have some good pitching already. We're going to probably invest in pitching in the offseason, even if we did spend money on, say, like a Bregman in the offseason as well. The harder thing would be getting the money all to work to avoid the tax next year. The reason why they're trying to stay under the tax this year is to reset the tables for next year and the year thereafter. Say instead of taking on the cash, say they got really, really crafty with this deal. Say they offloaded Jock Peterson. You would need an even better return and a more surefire solution coming back. So you're going to have to take out those bottom fillers there. Sorry, I just saw Mark Stein post something. Let me just see what it was. Oh, Al Horford. Okay. Sorry, Al Horford. Not important enough for it now. Okay. If you're taking on Jock Peterson, you're going to have to give up something of real value. You're probably going to have to give up maybe Castillo. If you hold out on Castillo, you're probably going to have to give up probably Dreiling for sure, who's having a resurgent year. Dreiling. Say the Rangers get a little bit more cash in this deal just to make it look a little bit better for the moderators on this site anyway. Oops. Okay. Like I said, you're probably going to have to include a little bit better value as well. So I'd expect another value around that 6 to 8 million as far as value here. And if you do that, Drake. Both of these guys are having really good years at AA. One of them just got promoted to AAA. Say you do Fitzgerald. Validate it. Major overpay? Yeah, I would say so if they're taking on Peterson's deal. Would I do this if I'm the Red Sox? Probably not. Because of the money committed to Peterson next year. I think the first iteration of this deal where they were getting, including money for this year to make it work for the Rangers, would be the more likely option. But again, you're not getting Dreiling in that scenario. I already got Berger in this deal. Say Bratt is the piece there. And maybe Dustin Harris. No. Ezekiel Duran? A guy that's out of options? No. Let's go with the 20-year-old outfielder. Maybe he turns into something. Gives you more value. Post it. Would I do this trade if I'm the Red Sox? I probably would say no as well. All right, let's try to catch up on a few of these comments here. What kind of return do we think we could get for Diaz, Lau, and Littell? Let's go ahead and do that one for you there, Michael. Let's see here. So you're talking Rays. We're looking majors. We're looking guys that are on close to expiring deals because they don't trade anything else. Littell, they tried trading last year and couldn't really get anything for him. I don't think anything will change this year. I think if they're going to trade from that rotation, they're going to trade guys like Rasmussen, etc. I think it's unlikely that they trade Littell, but just because his value is deemed as so low. Diaz could get you a nice piece, 9.8 valuation. Brendan Lau, I think, could get you a nice piece, 9.4 valuation. I think Fairbanks has a fair chance to be moved as well because of the money that's due him. Well, let's say they do Brendan Lau. A team that could use a second baseman or a DH or any type of a bat, really. It would be anybody in the league, but I think they could use him, or somebody could use him in the outfield or pretty much all over the place. We talked about the Cubs needing some offense. Say that the Cubs were the team here that was going in on a Brendan Lau. That'd be your quote-unquote third base or infielder piece that they could go after. They, of course, have Horner in that mix. They still have some options up the middle that they could work with, but I think he'd be a good veteran to kind of get into this group. What would the Cubs have to give up in order for it to be worth it for the Rays? Again, we're talking around 9 as far as field value. Owen Casey could be the piece there. Triantos, I keep seeing in a lot of proposals from Cubs fans. I don't think that would get it done, though. Maybe it could get the deal done. Maybe you get a Melendez in this deal. Validate, minor overpay. I'd agree. You say the Mariners make some sense. Let's go ahead and do the Mariners for you. Don't worry, I'm not going to skip over all your comments, I promise. We'll try to get to those in a minute. Just trying to go through this scenario for Michael here and just kind of build off of the trades. If you have ideas you want me to go through, please feel free to send them to us. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe at the bottom of the video. Got about 23 of you guys with us right now. Thank you guys for joining us on a Thursday evening. Be sure to join us every single night as we're going to take you guys through the MLB trade deadline. We do talk a little NHL, NBA, and NFL as well. So we'll talk a little NBA free agency and NHL free agency as well at the end of our video this evening. All right, what could they get in return here? Now remember, Lau's value 9.4. We send him to the Mariners. Mariners, they have a really good bullpen with which to work, but they have some good starters, both at the major and minor league level. They have tons of prospects that could be a nice fit in a trade here. I think Pete Bautista makes sense as kind of a headliner. Say you go after Bautista first. You're almost equal on value. And then you go to, say, a guy that's already on the major league roster. Let's start at the bottom end of this spectrum here. Leody Taveras, obviously, in the minors right now. Polanco's been a nice piece for them so far this year. Solano hasn't worked out quite as well as they had hoped. That could be the fit. Going back the other direction as far as the major league piece, I don't think so, though. I think they'd want somebody with at least some ability left. Moore makes some sense, but only he's on an expiring deal anyway. None of those guys really move the needle. Mastrobuoni was DFA'd earlier, or at least passed through waivers. Everybody had a chance to get him. No, thank you. Ben Williamson hasn't really shown anything at the major league level, but his value, I think, is a little too high for this deal. Bliss could make some sense. I don't know. Let's say Bliss is the piece that goes back the other way. And then we go with another minor league piece that's not going to cost a whole heck of a lot. Somebody's going to be in that, 0.5 range. Say you get a starting pitcher to, A-ball starting pitcher to hope on. You go for the 18-year-old Navarro. Woohoo. There's your deal. Update, post. So you're basically getting a nice couple of lottery ticket prospects, one with real potential in Bautista for Brandon Lau, and then you're getting a major league piece that can come in and at least be, a league average player for you in the interim. That's the type of trades the Rays are famous for doing. So if Seattle is willing to do this trade, I think they would be a team that I would consider not necessarily a front runner, but a legitimate contender for a piece of this caliber. Do I think they'd be willing to give up more for a better, more surefire offensive option? Absolutely. But I don't think there's really too many great offensive pieces back on the market this year. All right, Brendan, Jay's front office did say they're willing to move infield prospects, so you could add Jimenez or something like that. Toronto insiders are floating the idea that they are targeting Mason Miller and thinking of maybe converting him to a starter. That'd be interesting. I think he's too valuable back there in the bullpen, but we shall see. If I'm the Jays, though, I think an ace would be the difference maker. So we've been talking about that the last couple of nights anyway. Let's just see what it would have to look like for it to make some sense. So let's say that the starter is, I don't know, say the Braves finally decide that they're going to sell and they're going to get rid of Chris Sale. Right? Now, Sale only has a 2.3 value. It's not going to cost you a whole heck of a lot, but you're going to have to bowl over the Braves to be able to get this deal done. Let's look at a different starter, though. Who would be another big piece to move? Say the Marlins. You're going to have to bowl him over for Sandy Alcantara. His value is really depressed now at 17.8. Really gettable player at this point. I think they're going to try to bolster his value this year. I don't think it's overly likely. Who would be another ace, a difference-making ace that they could go for? Rasmussen from the Rays, maybe? He's pitching like an ace. Doesn't mean he is an ace, but he's pitching like one. He has been for the last 3 years. His value right now is 21. Just seems really depressed values. Gallen, again, he's not performing very well. Expiring contract as well, which does kind of fit the template of what the Jays have been doing with some of their starting pitching acquisitions. But, of course, that was all pre the extension for Vladdy Guerrero Jr. at this point. Are they really willing to continue down that well of expiring deals? Who would be another starter that could move the needle? Astros could have had a few. They're not going to sell. Cardinals, eh. Who has a starter? Padres could be an interesting team that buys and sells here. Could be a fit between the two teams. That'd be one to consider. Red Sox aren't going to be trading anybody off of that starting out of that starting group, except maybe Walker Buehler if they decide to sell. Rockies have nothing. Royals have Seth Lugo. That doesn't really move the needle. Kind of fits that 2-3 thing that we were talking about last night as well. Twins could be a fit. Tigers aren't selling. Yankees aren't selling. White Sox have nothing. Skeens, Boomtown, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us. Chicago Bears, welcome back. If you guys are just joining us for the first time this evening, hit that thumbs up at the bottom of the video. Goes a long way to helping us out. Let's say we go to... Let's just say we do the Sandy Alcantara one, because that's been the one that everybody's been talking about. Even though I think it's unlikely it happens. What would it take if the Blue Jays were to really put their hat in the ring for his services? Now remember, you're going to have to overpay, because they see his value as much higher than 17.8. So you're probably going to have to pay around $24, $25 to be able to get this deal done. Not an insurmountable cost if you're the Blue Jays, especially considering your less than ideal prospect pool to work with. That it's not going to cost you a pretty penny to be able to bring him in, especially since his value is depressed right now. As far as where he is, you're looking probably 24, 25. So I think that would probably rule out Nimmala. Remember, they're looking for prospects in the under 20-year-old range, position players primarily. Bonilla, a couple of starters make some sense. Nobody else really fits that description. So maybe Nimmala would have to be this piece that goes back, and a couple other lottery tickets. Maybe you round out the trade with that middle relief that help as well. Good to see you. Good to see you, my friend. Appreciate you, Chicago. Let's just say they do Nimmala. They overpay by the prospect and get a blue chipper in return for Alcantara. The Marlins, for your troubles, give you the reliever that you're also needing here by throwing in a Nardi or Bender. Say they throw in a, I don't know. How well is Nardi throwing this year? These are the numbers for Aroldis Chapman anyway. That's how good he has been. Strikeouts 51 in 35 innings. Whip of .77, 1.29 ERA. Only blown one save so far this year. He's been nails. But we want to look at Nardi, so let's go Marlins. Has he not pitched anyway? I can't remember if he's pitched this year or not. I guess not. Bender. 2.19 ERA. 1 save, 27 strikeouts. So he's not a strikeout guy. So it'd be more of a middle relief guy, which is what they're kind of looking for. So that'd be kind of a building block for a trade. You'd have to move Lukes or something. Well, I'll show you why that doesn't work here in a second. So say you're looking to move, you're not moving Lukes. Yasevich might be the one I think would probably be the fit. If you were to go with the next step down. But if those two are untouchable, Then you're looking at Ricky Tiedemann. I don't think that really moves the needle at all. Kasevich, that doesn't move the needle at all for the Marlins. So if you're looking to get an ace, you're probably going to have to give up Nimmala in this deal. That's why I don't think this is an overly likely scenario for the Blue Jays, because they don't fit with what the Marlins are looking for. Could they fit other teams? Absolutely. So just to kind of go back to our, what the Rays have been doing. Say you go back to the Rays are looking for some starting pitching. Say they move on from Rasmussen. They don't have to, but they could. It's in division, so that'd be tough to do. Value of 21. Then you could probably include some of these lower level pieces and kind of build a package together. Say you throw in a couple of younger pitchers going back the other way, under 20-year-old pitchers. And then you put Tiedemann at the front of this list. That probably would get the deal done. Minor overpay, sure. Brendan Lee, the Jays are going to buy the ace in the offseason. I'll agree with that one. I think there was a legitimate chance of them getting Corbin Burnes this offseason if he had been willing to go north of the border. Obviously, he was not willing to do so. All right, let's try to catch up on a few of these other comments here. Mark, welcome back. Appreciate you joining us once again. What would Texas have to give up for Bednar and bring back Santana? I don't think I like Santana, the pitcher, but the way he was used at the end of his tenure with Texas was really unfortunate. I think it left a sour taste in his mouth. Obviously, things have changed since his time here. But I think Bednar would be the one that they would want to go after if they did. Cost-wise, if the Rangers went after Bednar, not going to be excessive. Let's see here. Pirates. Rangers. Looking for relief pitchers. Bednar 6.6 has a year left after this year, or after this season, and has about a $6 million salary, which means you're going to have to include about $3 million from Texas to be able to get this deal done. So let's look at where the value could be for around $6 million. You could throw in Osuna to give the Pirates an offensive piece. I think that would be kind of the foundational piece that goes back the other way. And then salary-wise, Pirates don't have money, but you could probably convince them to take back 1 year of something. Low value, low cost, something. Dane Dunning would save you about $1 million. That would probably get the deal done. Jonah Heim going back the other way might make some sense. In fact, I've mentioned Jonah Heim and the fit with the Pirates more than a few times the last couple of years. That would free up some at-bats anyway there. Higashioka, obviously, I think the finances would be a little too far down the line for even the Pirates, so I don't think Higashioka would be the fit. Now, if you're including Jonah Heim in this deal, what do the Pirates have at catcher that they could send back the other direction? Let's look at the majors. Joey Bart, not making anything. Nobody really there makes much sense besides Bart, and I'm not willing to do that. So take out Heim. Say we throw in Dunning just to make the money work. Validate and post. So that would be what a cost of Bednar would be. A good outfield prospect. Money going out the door to match whatever Bednar's bringing in, and you go with this. Go with that the rest of the way. Not too bad. Will the Cubs trade for an ace before the deadline? They will. We've talked about that the last couple of nights anyway, but I would expect them and the Mets to be the most likely teams to push for an ace at the deadline. To me, they're the two teams that really need one. They were offering him 210 and 6. Yes, they were for Burns. Alrighty. Let's finish up our trade discussion anyway and just have a little bit of fun with some of the other names that we've seen available. One idea that I just keep kicking around in my head is the Minnesota Twins. They're not going to be buyers this year. Looking at where they are in the standings right now, Twins are 5 games under 500, 4.5 games back. You say, hey, look, their offense hadn't been great this year. Their pitching's been okay. They're still only 5 games back. They've been incredibly streaky this year. Who's to say they're not going to go on another big, long winning streak? And you're right. But the injuries tell a different story. The underlying numbers tell a different story. And that this is a team that's kind of on the precipice of collapsing on itself. The sum of the parts do not add up to a greater total. In fact, they detract from it. And so I think that the Twins will definitely be in sell mode at this deadline. Now, what could they give up? To me, there's a couple of pieces that I'm keeping my eye on if I'm, an outside team looking in. I'm looking at their closer, first and foremost. I really like Johan Duran. I think he has the ability to be a lockdown closer in any market he goes to, be able to handle it. Even if he went to New York, the Dodgers, he could handle the pressure. He has the ability to put up great numbers in those spots. This is a team that's looking to shed some salary as well. So if you're the Minnesota Twins, you have Buxton, who's been relatively healthy off and on this year, more than he has been in years past. And maybe this is the year you try to capitalize on his value. When he's in the lineup, he certainly is a difference maker for you. When he's not in the lineup, the albatross of the contract, the ownership issues, really make an untenable situation. So, if you're able to move off of Carlos Correa's contract, you'd love to do that. But the most likely deal that you might get some return on is Byron Buxton. To me, this is the contract of what Luis Robert should have been done, or what should have been done anyway, with Luis Robert 2 years ago when he still had value. Injury-riddled player who still had value in an AL Central team. Very comparable player type. Buxton's more of a center fielder, though. Robert, to me, is a corner outfielder. And that's kind of the difference there, where Buxton has a touch more value in the field. But 34, I would capitalize on that value all day long if I'm Minnesota. Same thing with the closer. This is a team that's not poised to win this year. It's not poised to win next year. They got a couple of really nice pieces coming, including Walker Jenkins. It's probably going to be a year or two until he's the face of your team. You got Royce Lewis. If he can stay healthy, he will be the established veteran on the roster at that point. Brooks Lee could get some time and really establish himself at the big league level this year, get all the playing time he wants, among several other pieces that you could really try to do that with. You got plenty of starters that you could try to peddle at the deadline as well and get some really nice returns, including Joe Ryan, Ober. You're looking at Pablo Lopez as well, but now with the injury, his value has plummeted. Just a very interesting situation. But if I'm a team looking at this Twins organization, Duran is the piece I would really want. And as I mentioned, the Rangers are absolutely salivating to buy at this year's deadline. They may even overpay for the right pieces. And I think Duran would be one such piece. What would it cost? Well, just for Duran, say they just did a straight-up deal, we're looking around 20 value, so say with the higher price on high-end relief pitching, you elevate that to say 24, 25 mil as far as returning value. So you could get Robert Garcia, Josh Smith, Rosario. Rosario, I keep throwing him in there because I think he's the headliner of a lot of these packages. I think he would be the jumpstart to that rotation if they trade away a couple of pieces out of that rotation. So Rosario would be my starting point there. Let me put him in this deal before I miss him. I don't think the Twins are necessarily looking for anything back on the major league level. So again, we're looking for around 24, 25 value. That gets us to 15. We need roughly 8, 9 more as far as value. Jacob Latz, a major league piece, could go back the other way. Dryling's had a nice year. Osuna could be the major league outfielder that takes over for Buxton. Could be a nice piece there. Jake Berger takes over at first base, but again, I don't think they're looking for major league talent. Say they put, say they trade Fitzgerald. and they trade Santos. Santos' name has been out there quite a bit. I think this would be a deal that probably gets done with the Twins. Twins get a starter for the future, top 100 prospect for their closer there. They get a starter that can easily go into the rotation next year in Santos. And they get Fitzgerald, a prospect up the middle who could be there in a couple of years. Gives you something to hope for, gives you a top 100 guy, and gives you a steady guy who could probably be a 4 or 5 starter for the Twins as soon as next year. If I'm the Twins, and I am a Twins fan, I'd probably say yes. As a Rangers fan, as the Rangers, I'd probably say yes to this deal. Win-win for me. Let's go back to that same Twins team. Remember how I mentioned they have other pieces besides their closer that they could move? Say they decide to expand this deal. Rangers need hitting, right? They don't have a lot of money that they could spend at the deadline this year. Of course, the deal that we just made, they'd probably have to get a couple of dollars thrown in from the Twins to be able to get this deal done. Tough to do for a team that's not willing to take on salary this year, obviously. All right. The whole point of moving on from Buxton would be offloading some salary here. So it'd probably have to be turned into a 3-team deal to make it work. A team that could take on some salary, and for the trouble of doing so, they would take on some assets. So what teams have had no trouble doing that in the past? Mets, they're in contention, they're not looking to do so. Nationals certainly could do something like that, they're going to spend next year. Padres are up against it financially. They're not going to do. Orioles have their struggles financially. Same thing with the Phillies. Pirates aren't going to do it. Rays certainly not. Reds certainly not. Red Sox, no. Rockies, no. Royals, less likely. Tigers, no. White Sox could in the right situation. Braves, no. They're up against it. So I think that leaves you with what? I'm trying to remember who I even said it was. I just don't think there's a team that really fits for that third team too well. Unless it's the Angels. That could be an interesting one. Okay, so let's get this package together. Say they go Buxton first. Is that the bat I want if I'm the Rangers? Probably. Probably. You get Duran if you're the Rangers. We'll go to the Rangers and say they offload Jock Peterson and that terrible contract to the Angels. Now, the value for the Rangers they're getting is about $73 million for a closer, offloading Peterson's deal, and bringing in Buxton. Would I do something like that? Honestly, with the positional logjam they're going to have with Buxton, I'd probably say they take out Buxton and they offload Peterson's deal to allow them to have the financial flexibility to add a different bat in another trade. Let's say they go with the framework of Duran, Peterson. Say from the Angels they go after a Ward or something like that. That would be a piece that could go the other direction. You could go for another closer type piece. Ben Joyce, what's his numbers look like this year? I forget what his numbers look like. Is he injured? I think he is injured. What about Kenley Jansen? His numbers this year, 3.94, 15 saves. Not exactly dominant, and if I'm already getting Duran, I don't need Jansen, so no thank you. Okay, let's go back over here to the Rangers. You're going to need roughly 39 value plus, say, 5 mil to make it worth it for, we'll say 7 mil to make it worth it for both sides. Again, buyers pay a premium at the deadline. So say you again spend Rosario to the Twins. Makes sense. You send Dreiling to the Angels. You send Burger, no, not Burger, Santos to the Twins. And you send Fitzgerald to the Twins as well. There's your 4. Now you sent Dreiling to the Angels. You're going to need to spend another 12-ish towards the Angels. 12-ish could get you Osuna. And Bratt. It's a lot of farmhands going out of Texas. I don't know, that's pretty close to me though. Let's say that's the deal there. Is that the reason why it's saying rejected? No, it's some other reason. Okay. Oh, it's because the Angels haven't included anything in the deal. They're just taking on the salary here. That's why it's giving me the error. Okay, that makes more sense. So if the Angels were to include somebody off of their Major League roster who's making a net 0 impact, doesn't cost anything, Rengifo, that's too much money. Actually, if you're offloading Peterson, it's not too much money. Gives you a multi-positional player that you could then peddle to another team that needs the flexibility there. What's Rengifo's numbers then? If you're the Angels, you go to Rengifo, 230 average, kind of a year. Not a needle mover this year. Who else is around that price point? JD Martinez, Lamont Wade. Anybody could have had Lamont Wade just a week or so ago. Nobody else really makes sense here. Soler. That'd be half the price of Peterson. So what does Soler's year look like anyway? 206? No thank you. I think that's pretty much it. So who would I want? Brock Burke doesn't move the needle for me. Anderson maybe. I'd probably take Rengifo and see if I could turn him around and flip him to another team. It's still giving me the rejected thing. I think it's because I got too many pieces in this deal from Texas at this point again. Who knows? They don't usually like these big money dump type trades on this model here. Okay. Alright. Appreciate you guys joining us. If you guys are new here, be sure to hit that like and subscribe. Let us know in the chat some of the trades that you guys are proposing. We do check out this baseball trade value site from time to time. So in fact, before we wrap up our discussion on baseball here, let's look at some of the trades that the community has posted out there. See if we can get the trade boards to load. All right, let's go to featured trades first, because those are the ones that have a lot of responses that make some sense. All right, Merrill Kelly from the Diamondbacks, having a down year, expiring deal, goes to the Mets. Number 2-3 type starter there. I still don't think that's enough of an improvement for that Mets organization, but it would be the type of starter I think they could readily get. If they're giving back somebody like a Beatty here who takes over for Suarez, they trade away Suarez to the Yankees, and the Diamondbacks still stay competitive in the wild card race. Makes sense for both sides, but I would try to do better if I'm the Mets. Phillies get Clase and Kwan. Low cost, I like both of those, but you're giving up 2 premium level prospects here. That's not going to happen. It's just you're not going to see that type of a move from the Guardians. Kwan is still so cheap. I don't think they're going to capitalize on his value, at least at this point. Yankees get Suarez in exchange for LaGrange and Reggio. I'm guessing that's how you pronounce it. Diamondbacks aren't getting anything that really helps them this year. Honestly, the trade we made earlier for Suarez makes a lot more sense for them. All right, Keller goes to the Cubs. Gives them a 2-3 type starter this year. Could be an ace in the future. In exchange for Ben Brown and Kevin Alcantara. Pretty close value according to the calculator. I still wouldn't do it if I'm the Pirates. I still think Keller has more in him, and I'm willing to hold on to him and see if I can raise that price even more. Naylor is a name that is out there. Mariners are the team I've heard connected with him quite a bit. Hancock and Joyce make some sense as far as the return. Cost-wise, I think the Diamondbacks would want a major leaguer back to kind of take that spot. Chris Rodriguez for Bednar, not happening. Mason Miller to the Tigers, okay, in exchange for Jace Young, Bryce Rainier, Troy Melton. Who says no? If I'm the Tigers, I don't have faith in my bullpen holding up, so I would love the acquisition of Miller. But they are giving up a pretty good package for him. The A's have held out for more in the past, so in reality, I think the A's probably say no. But if I'm the GM of the A's, I sign this deal all day long. With the hot and cold nature of all closers, Mason Miller, while he might have elite stuff, really hasn't shown me that he's Mariano Rivera level closer yet, and so I don't necessarily view him in that category. That being said, he's still a very good option out there. I would try to capitalize on his value and see if I can get somebody else to take over that closer role that may not be as good as Mason Miller, but might be able to raise his status on that roster and raise his availability the next time there's a trade deadline or an off-season trade package, etc. There to work with. Hunter Goodman, Jake Bird, the 2 good pieces off of that Rockies roster. For Francisco Alvarez, yikes. And Sproat, I say no, honestly, if I'm both teams. Well, I say no if I'm the Mets. I think the Mets are overpaying a little bit here. I think Sproat has a lot more value. I think Alvarez is on the downside of his value. I think his value will only go up. I think Goodman might be at the peak of his value, and his value to me is going to go down. Same thing with Bird. I would rather have the Mets pieces rather than the Rockies in that deal. Luis Robert Davis Martin, yikes, in exchange for Tidwell, Baez, and Lantigua. I say no if I'm the Mets. This doesn't move the needle enough offensively for me to make it worth the financial investment, even with Cohen's money. And you're giving up some decent pieces in return here. White Sox, I don't think, do this trade either for them having to include Martin in this deal as well. Looks like the Rangers' former manager passed away. Let me pull it up here. Just popped up on my phone. Billy Hunter managed the Rangers from 77 to 78. All right, Pirates, they get Everson Pereira in exchange for Ke'Bryan Hayes. Not happening. Pirates would rather have Hayes, even with a long-term contract in the fold there. Paranormal, welcome back. Been a minute since I've seen you. Appreciate you joining us once again. Yankees falling apart, though. I'd say they're kind of having the middle season struggles that we all expect all teams to have to a certain point. I think they played well above their heads in the first half here, though. I think there will be some regression to the mean, both offensively and for the pitching staff. We're starting to see some of the results of that. Blue Jays are playing well above their heads right now, and I think they're still doing very well. But we shall see. Suns and Heat apparently just talked about a Bradley Beal trade before talks fizzled out, according to Mark Stein. Interesting. Bradley Beal is actually on discussions right now for a buyout from the Phoenix Suns. Red Sox and Giants. Well, obviously we saw this trade already go down. Phillies and Orioles. Okay, this is a good one. Mullins, who's not a good defensive outfielder at all, goes to the Phillies primarily as a bat and speed option. They get a very nice closer, Felix Bautista, who's still working his way back from injury, still getting there. You're getting Escobar, Abel, and Rojas if you're the Orioles. Doesn't move the needle enough for me to give up Bautista in this deal, and I think they could do better for Mullins as well. I think the Orioles say no to this all day long. I missed watching you. Been battling health issues out in the hospital trying to hang on. You've been battling health issues as well, my friend? Well, I hope you're all right now. I know I had mine as well, but I hope you're doing all right. All right, Cubs get Zach Gallen. This is I think this trade could possibly happen. Gallen to the Cubs. The return is Birdsell and Howard. Cubs say yes to this all day long. Diamondbacks, I think, say no. They would want more in return for one, and two, they want pieces coming back that make sense. Let's look at the other side of this trade. This is when his value was a little higher before they adjusted it. 6.1. You're getting Neely and Wiggins. I still don't think it's enough, even with the adjusted value going down. And they're going to, again, want major league pieces back that actually make a difference in a wild card race there for the Diamondbacks. The two sides make sense for a trade. You know, the pieces that the Cubs have could fit, say, a third team that could then supply the pieces back to the Diamondbacks. I don't think there'd be a straight-up trade between the two. I think Gallen is a great fit for the Cubs, though. We'll go ahead and go through just a couple more trades before we head on to our NBA and NHL conversation before we close out for the evening. DeVries to the Orioles, top prospect. Interesting. Padres take on the contracts of Eflin, Mullins, O'Hearn, and they get Rushman. They finally solved their issue at catcher, even though he is injured right now. O'Hearn's having a career year. Mullins. For finances, Padres say no every single day of the week on this one. If you could get the Orioles to pay down almost all of those contracts for at least this year, I think you could have a conversation about it. In fact, I'm kind of curious. Baltimore. Rutschman hit the IL for the first time in his 4-year career. Now has hit it a second time. Lower back strain for Eflin. Look at all these dang pop-ups. It's ridiculous. Okay. Go back. Complete stats. He's not having a great year anyway. No. Okay. Next trade. Luis Robert in exchange for Chas McCormick. And Price. Astros ain't taking that deal anyway because of the money involved. Yankees Diamondbacks. Suarez in exchange for LaGrange and Vivas could be a fit, but again, I think the Diamondbacks want another piece back in return. That's on the Major League side. Red Sox get Cronenworth, Cruz, and Mayfield in exchange for Story. They get off the money there, and Duran, who the Padres would then have to pay. Padres are looking to save money, not take on money, so that trade doesn't make any sense either. No thank you on that deal. We'll do these last two trades here. Angels, Yankees. Yankees get Moncada, low-cost piece that kind of helps them out at third base. I don't think he moves the needle enough for them, so I'm going to go ahead and say no already. Duran, big-time value, in exchange for Waldron, Salas, and Estrada. No thank you. I think they're looking for Salas to kind of take over long-term behind the plate. Waldron's a nice piece for them right now, and Estrada has a brighter future. I think the Padres say no to this one as well, because then they'll still have to pay Duran as well. Red Sox, I think, probably say yes to this trade because it rehabs, or basically kind of gives them back what they lost in the trade for Garrett Crochet. So I think the Red Sox probably say yes to that one all day. All right, just to kind of get into just the last couple of news items around the sports world. A lot of LeBron James talk I saw out there today about the possibility of him going to the Dallas Mavericks. That's not going to happen, especially via trade. I did a lot of different incarnations of that deal, and there are trade scenarios that work, but nothing that really fits from a basketball standpoint, so that's not going to happen. Now, if you expanded it to a 3-team deal, sent LeBron, Bronny James, and a couple of very, and I mean very small productive contracts to the Dallas Mavericks in exchange for a package that includes Klay Thompson, PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, Caleb Martin, Jaden Hardy, Omax Prosper, basically anything that's not nailed down in that rotation, they could easily make the contracts work. But remember, the Lakers are looking for expiring deals because they're trying to preserve that max cap space available for when in 2027, so they can try to add somebody at that point. 26, 27 anyway. So we shall see. But I think they'd have to be expanded to a 3-team deal to where the Lakers get just the expiring deals, and whatever team's giving up the expiring deals gets the better value pieces from the Mavericks. LeBron, I still think, has great value. I think the Mavericks would actually be giving up more talent overall than giving up or than what they'd be getting in LeBron. But I think the consolidating of that roster overall is kind of what they need to do here a little bit. They need to shed a little bit of salary right now anyway through consolidating that roster, and LeBron would be one player that they could go to try to get that done. There are a plethora of other ones out there. I think there's also a world in which we see the Mavericks go after Bradley Beal if he's bought out as well. Dame Lillard, I think, is likely to go to either one of the coasts, say in Miami or to Golden State, maybe even the Los Angeles Lakers or to the Clippers. I wouldn't rule out the Dallas Mavericks as well because of his personal connection to Nico Harrison from his days over at Nike. That was one of the first initial point guards or first initial free agents that was initially rumored to go to Dallas when they hired Nico Harrison years and years and years ago. I say years and years. It's been about 3 years now, I think, since he was hired. But that was the first big-time player that was mentioned in connection with the Mavericks when Nico got the job. So we'll see if that connection pays off. But they would, again, have to consolidate roster space to be able to get that deal done. On the NHL side of things, the top free agent in the entire sport this offseason that actually made it to market, not including Mitch Marner or the guys that signed before free agency actually opened, but the one who actually made it to market was Nikolai Ehlers, and he decided to take a couple of days with his decision, and he decided to join the Carolina Hurricanes on a 6-year deal, 8.5 AAV. Carolina has all kinds of money, so they were able to get this deal done. He wanted to go to a market that wasn't necessarily as hockey intense, as hockey hyper focused, and he got his wish by going to Carolina. Meanwhile, Winnipeg, who lost him, certainly has the money to be able to fill the hole that was left by him, but there's really nobody left in the free agent market to be able to fill that spot. They're going to have to probably take on some contracts to be able to get the deal done as well. Heel, if LeBron comes to the Mavs, I will. It's a stranger. I think there's an outside chance he goes to Dallas, not necessarily this year, but as a free agent next year, if he decides to play one more season, in which case, of course, you have to wonder if Bronny gets traded to Dallas as well, those kinds of things. Heel, on the baseball note, I do think the Rangers should trade DeGrom. They could get an amazing bat back. I'm just saying shopping him wouldn't be a horrible idea. That's never going to happen. Sorry, it's just not. Primarily because Bruce Bochy and Chris Young will never let that happen. Eovaldi and DeGrom will finish their contracts out with the Texas Rangers. That's a trade of DeGrom is not happening. So even if you took out those two aspects of it, say Bochy and Young weren't with the organization, just GM X and Manager Y were on the team, and the team wasn't producing very well on the field, and so DeGrom might be the odd man out as good as he's performing this year. They're still underwater. The contract is still a little bit underwater, according to outside sources looking in. In fact, let's look and show you where his value is at right now, just before we kind of wrap up for the evening. They updated their value, I believe, 2 weeks ago. So DeGrom still has negative 35 value. Say you attach, the remainder of his contract this year, you pay it down, and you pay a little bit of the year next year. You're now at a net zero acquisition cost. So another team would basically have to give you an A-ball player and deal done. That's not worth it for the Rangers. That's not worth it for, well, it'd definitely be worth it to the other team for them to get a DeGrom for basically for free. Now, could you demand more in a trade? Absolutely. But I think there's no reason to move on from Jacob DeGrom. He has proven to be that good so far this year, and his value to the Rangers is so much higher than what it actually is on the open market. There's no way I would move him right now. Marcus Semien has really rehabbed his value. If you get that contract back to above water by the end of the year, that would be a contract you may be able to move, but because he's such a leader in that clubhouse, I don't see him moving. If you guys did see the comments by Kevin Pillar through Foul Territory earlier this week, basically saying there was no clubhouse culture with the Rangers when he was there with the Rangers for all of, 6 weeks this year. He joined them in spring training late, missed some time due to an injury, didn't go on the road trip with them because of an injury, really didn't spend much time with them in the clubhouse to begin with. His comments on Foul Territory basically said there was no time that they didn't really get together as a team. They didn't do things together as a team. The Rangers do things together all the time as a team. They go out, they're doing a family trip right now out to San Diego with the wife and kids, and everybody's out there on the beach doing stuff like that together. So I don't necessarily buy that. I just think it's a veteran player who really got into spring training late. Nothing against the player, but I agree with the guys over at DLS Sports anyway, with Jeff Wilson, basically saying that Pillar just wasn't here, wasn't around the team long enough. And yes, Corey Seager does have a different routine, but it's not like he's aloof from the rest of the club. He has his own routine that works for him. And are you going to be the one that tells Corey Seager to change what he's been doing that's been working his entire career? Absolutely not. And his offense certainly has started to come around over the last couple of weeks, and we're starting to see evidence of that with the results on the field. But I would not be trading DeGrom. He has too much value internally to the Texas Rangers, and too little value for what you could get in return for him. Would you wait till the offseason to try to move a guy like Semien? That's what we just talked about for Semien. Say, like I just mentioned, if you get that contract above water, say you get like a Brennan Lau back, an expiring deal for him, might make it worth it. But again, Semien ain't going to the Rays. That ain't going to happen. You're not going to get a comparable piece back for Semien, especially with the money that he's making. I think you're likely stuck with his contract through the entirety of it. If you're looking to save money, the best way to do it would be try to offload Jock Peterson if he has a strong second half in the offseason this year, and just see if you can utilize that money elsewhere. You're not moving on from Seager. I would try to move on from both of the catchers, Higashioka and Heim, bring in two brand new guys and just roll with it like they used to back when they had Jorvi Torrealba and pretty much catcher X, Y, and Z that really didn't have a long-term future with the club. Benji Molina, this 1 to 2 year catchers, and then they move on to the next guy. That's the formula I think they need to go back to, because right now, whatever their catching is doing right now, it ain't it offensively. So I would still look for good guys who can who can receive the ball really well, that you're not going to have to pay a whole lot of money to. The money that we're paying to Higashioka is obscene compared to what we expected for those dollars that we are giving him. I want Murakami, who should be posted this upcoming offseason. Absolutely, I think every team will, but the favorite by far is one of the two New York teams. I've heard the Yankees quite a bit on him, but you got to wonder if they have the availability to take him on, considering their current roster construction with the pieces that they have. Mets certainly would be a great fit as well. Can't rule out the Dodgers, Giants, Padres, Mariners, Cubs, and then, of course, the Rangers. But he's going to have no shortage of teams interested in his services. Appreciate you guys joining us. Be sure to hit that like, the thumbs up on the bottom of the video. If you guys wouldn't mind doing that, it goes a long way to helping us out here at the Upside. We'll be back live again tomorrow night. We'll discuss a little bit more about some trade talk as well. Happy Independence Day, for all you guys in the U.S. Happy, belated Canada Day for those of you who celebrated in Canada as well. Really do appreciate you guys joining us this evening. Oh, one bit of news I just saw pop up anyway. Wyatt Langford went 1 for 3 in his re-up assignment with the Riders. He could be activated tomorrow. We'll see if that gets done as well. All right. Y'all have a great evening. We'll see you guys again tomorrow night. Stay safe out there, everybody.